My boyfriend uninvited me from our tropical vacation to take his female best friend instead. Now I'm rethinking our entire relationship. My boyfriend had been planning a summer vacation with me and two of his best friends, a guy, 25M, and a girl, 29F, to stay at his mom's friend's house in Hawaii. Everything seemed set, but when the guy friend dropped out unexpectedly, the whole plan shifted. For context, my boyfriend and I have been together since November, and things are serious. We've talked about moving in together and see our relationship as long-term. So, when 29F told him she felt uncomfortable with me going on the trip now that it was just the three of us, I didn't expect what happened next. She said she didn't want to be a third wheel and wouldn't go if I came along. Without telling me, my boyfriend agreed to change the trip to just the two of them, and even switched the destination to Costa Rica. I found out when I asked him which week in August I should set aside for the Hawaii trip. That's when he casually told me about the new plans and said we could take a trip together another time, maybe to Mexico City. I was floored. I tried to explain how hurt I felt. Being invited and then uninvited from a tropical vacation with his close female friend I'd never even met. We eventually decided to plan a trip to Copenhagen as a compromise, and I asked to meet her beforehand to feel more at ease about their trip. We spent the 4th of July visiting her and her boyfriend in their city. It was nice to put a face to a name, but the trip felt cold. She wasn't welcoming, and even my boyfriend admitted she was surprisingly unfriendly. I tried to connect with her and her boyfriend. I'm usually good at breaking the ice, but it didn't click. To make things worse, I noticed tension between them as they argued about their future and a separate trip her boyfriend had planned without her. After all this effort to smooth things over, I told my boyfriend I still felt uncomfortable and disrespected by how it was handled. On a visit to his family, they were shocked by the situation and said they'd be furious if they were in my shoes. This led to a fight where I asked him to come up with a plan to make me feel better about the trip. His response? He promised never to plan something like this again, but that didn't feel like enough. He offered not to go. But the tickets were already paid for, and I didn't want to be the one to ruin the trip and risk resentment. When it finally came time for the trip, his solution was a bag of peanut butter cups. I drove them to the airport, feeling completely disregarded and disrespected. Now I'm torn. I want to end things, but it's hard to let go of a relationship that has otherwise been so good. Update 9 days later. I was really upset the day I dropped him off. He kept texting me, but I didn't respond. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, and I knew I needed some time to clear my head. The next day, I sent him a thoughtful text explaining that I didn't feel safe or valued with how the trip was handled. I let him know I'd be dropping his things at his place and leaving his keys with a neighbor. He called, but didn't leave a message, then followed up with a text saying he didn't understand. Throughout the week, he kept calling and messaging me, but I couldn't bring myself to respond. By Thursday, it seemed like he realized I was serious. He reached out with logistical questions, and I let him know where his key was. When he got home and saw his things, he called and left me a long message. I was working, but honestly, I still didn't feel ready to talk. His voicemail was emotional. He said he didn't understand why I was ending things and accused me of throwing away everything we had built. He even said he didn't accept the breakup and demanded that I explain my reasoning to his face. This upset me, but I didn't want to escalate things. I tried calling him but got too emotional, so I decided to send an email instead. Here's what I wrote. The time apart has given me space to reflect, and I've realized we're not right for each other. I'm sorry for asking you to change things about your life that you shouldn't have to change for anyone. From the start, this trip was handled in a way that felt very hurtful. It began with an ultimatum from your best friend. Either she goes or I go, and you chose her. You didn't suggest introducing us, encourage her to bring someone else, or even consult me. That was already a lot to process, but I stayed. I tried to be supportive, even though your friendship with her has always been a source of confusion for me. There are stories about past misunderstandings, a history of feelings, and challenges in making her boyfriend comfortable with your relationship. These things created tension for me, but I stayed, hoping we could work through it. Then came the logistics of the trip. You booked tickets with her during dinner I had cooked for us and our guests, ignoring my repeated requests to join the group. Later, when I asked to meet her and her boyfriend to ease my discomfort, the interaction felt cold and distant, adding to my unease. I kept expressing my feelings about the trip, hoping for a solution, but nothing changed. When the day of the trip came, you could see how upset I was, but you left anyway. You texted me goodnight but didn't call, even though you knew how I felt. The whole week was hard, and when I shared my feelings, your response was simply, "I'm sorry you feel this way." You dismissed how difficult this was for me. This wasn't just a trip to a tropical destination. It was a symbol of unmet emotional needs in our relationship. I've tried to make peace with your friendship, but it's clear this dynamic doesn't work for me. I don't want to spend my life being told my feelings are invalid. This breakup doesn't need to be mutual. I don't need your permission to end this relationship. He replied with an email taking responsibility for most things, but insisted his friendship with her shouldn't have made me uncomfortable. He said the only issue was my perspective. I wrote back that trust is something you build over time, and that our relationship didn't have the foundation to handle this kind of strain. He agreed and apologized. We ended things on amicable terms, but this style of relationship isn't what I want, and I stand by my decision.